You've got to have a cheat day. And for me, is once a weekend, I'll have some chocolates or sweets. I really, I started to see sitting behind a desk, looking at figures is all well and good. I love analyzing data so much. But at the end of the day, I wasn't helping anybody. I wasn't, helping. For me, that's a huge part of me. I like helping and it makes me live my life every day to the fullest. So it was great to be back at the squash club where I could coach squash. I coached all ranges from young kids to adults.
Shaun, welcome to the World XP podcast. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you doing, Eric?
Good, good. Can't complain. As we both were just discussing, we've hit Snowmageddon apparently again, which in DC apparently happens once every, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and then everyone forgets how to drive. So hopefully we will not be in that situation this time. Do you want to do a quick intro for the people, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name's Shaun Cardoza. I've lived in the States for about 26 years. I grew up in Zimbabwe. And I'm a personal trainer right now. My degree is finance, and I made a quick change into personal training. And I played squash pretty much my whole life.
Very nice. The question from the last guest. Uh, if you could be any animal, what would it be and why?
Oh man, this is a tough one. So growing up from Africa, I think I'm going to be a bit biased here. I want to be a lion for sure. I don't know if this fits my persona, but I think being a leader and setting by example is a big thing in my life, and also being humble about it. I know lions go about, but going about the things very quietly, and then they're very strategic the way they do things within the jungle with their pack of animals. So I think for sure, if I have a good team around me and I have great friends, great family, I think that's how I am. I become a lion where I protect and I survive.
Very nice. That's a great answer, I think. Well thought out. So I want to start just like, where'd you grow up? What was it like? What's childhood like in Zimbabwe? I think a lot of people listening that are from the US either don't know, myself included, or have maybe an idea from movies or books that they read. But what was it like? Where'd you grow up? What was it like?
Yeah, so I grew up in the capital of Zimbabwe, Harare, in a very pretty big neighborhood. My parents actually picked uh, a home that was really far out of the city center, so I couldn't see my friends a lot, not many play dates, which was fine with us because we had a big yard. I went to school. I went to actually a Jesuit school growing up from grade one all the way up to, I actually moved to the US. So that was pretty, very, very structured, I would say. So the community was very close. Everybody knew each other, all races, all denominations, and we all got along really well. I think what brought us all together was sport in Zimbabwe. So a lot of cricket, a lot of field hockey, soccer, and squash and tennis. So yeah.
Right. How did your parents end up there? Because I think, and Samir, shout out to Samir, gave me some of the background. Your parents are not native to Zimbabwe. So how did they end up there? And um, talk a little bit about their journey and into how that sort of came to be, along with some of the other stuff that was around when you were growing up, like for example, cultural differences and things like that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, shout out to Samir for sure. Yeah, definitely. So, my mom and dad are originally Goan. So their great grandparents were from the southeast coast of India, which is called Goa, which was once colonized by the Portuguese. Hence, my last name is Cardoza, and a lot of people are thrown off when they see me. Oh, my first name, Shaun Cardoza. So they're like very confused, which is kind of nice. So it's a rare thing. So yeah, they actually moved with the English that also were part of the movement in India, big colonization too, and hopped on a ship and thought there was better weather in Zimbabwe. So we ended up all staying there in Zimbabwe, and my parents were born and raised there. The community itself, or the culture, was in Zimbabwe. I would say a little bit segregated, to be honest. Everybody did their own things. But when it came to school, I'm happy to say that we all homogenized, we all became one, which was really nice. But yeah, the main focus, I would say the biggest thing in Zimbabwe was everybody was very family oriented. It was no hustle bustle. When it was time to be with family, it was a huge, huge aspect of it. So, which was really nice.
Yeah. When and how old were you when you guys moved to the States?
So we moved in 1999. So I was 16. My mom's 20 years older than me, so she was 36, and my dad was about 38. So yeah, we moved then.
Okay, so talk through that. 16 is not a, I mean, well, it might be a fun time for some people, but for a lot of people, it's not, you're figuring yourself out. You're in high school trying to figure out college, what you want to do with your life. Um, so to move, let alone move completely different country, different culture, um, all these things. Talk through that from your perspective, but also some of the things maybe that your parents dealt with in terms of the immigration sort of process, because that's a big thing in the news these days, and I think it confuses a lot of people, and I mean myself included to some extent, which is like there seems to be a need to have some reasonable standard for somebody like you guys to come here and make a living for yourself and right you contribute to the community and all these things, but then at the same time maybe we don't let everybody in. I don't know, it seems to be some kind of balance that needs to take place, and so can you describe what the process was actually like from stuff that you learned from your parents, but also for you, and then kind of just describe the how you're feeling, culture shock, adjustments, all those things as well. I know there's
Yeah.
a lot in there, but just go
Yeah.
tell the story. You're good.
No,
We got
yeah.
time.
So we were very fortunate enough. So we applied, my mom and dad both applied for a green card lottery. So once every couple of years, the US Embassy actually posted in the Zimbabwe Herald newspaper that they would give three families every couple of months to have a chance to live in the US. And growing up in Zimbabwe, I laughed at my mom when she said this because I said, it's a scam. They just want your money. So being from a religious background, my mom would say, "Hey, we're gonna pray every night, and if this happens, it's meant to be." So both my parents, just a little bit background there, they both never got college degrees. They were very close. They got married really young. My dad's from a huge family. He has seven brothers, two sisters, and my mom's probably about just four siblings. But yeah, they both never got degrees. So moving to the States was a shock. We waited for about 2 years till the process ended. Each couple of months we got a notice saying, "Hey, you in the running. We need this amount of money. So could you send this?" And I kept haggling my mom and saying, they just want to take our money. And then what's going to happen? I don't know. So, but we kept our faith and we kept going on with it. And believe it or not, things started getting really terrible in Zimbabwe. Inflation started to rise, and it was about that time of the year, 99, that the African government was taking a lot of land from previous owners. And so it caused a big stir within the country, and things didn't look very certain for all of us. So we were very fortunate, and we won these green card lotteries, and we had to scramble because the visas were pretty expensive to obtain. So lucky enough, some family members helped us out, and we were able to land in the U.S. September 1999. But yeah, the struggle was real for sure. 16 years old, coming into a new place, I would say for sure I was well established in my career of sports, which I liked doing, and I practiced really hard at it. So that was a big thing for me. I be honest with you, I wasn't much of a student. I tried really hard, but the learning aspect was tough for me. But coming into the US, yeah, it opened our eyes a lot because opportunity was at our fingertips. I think everybody's should be given a chance in life to experience something else or given an opportunity in a different country if they can. I think everybody has a new unique aspect about them, and what they could bring to that country could be, life changing for somebody else. Um, I'll lead that off into something that I do in the future, what I've done so far in my career. But it was different. 16 years old, everybody had their own friends. But believe it or not, yeah, I would sit in cafeterias by myself and have lunch. And I was totally fine with this, Eric. Going to an all boys school had prepared us. By 16, you were ready to become a man in Africa. You had to go find a job. You had to help your family out first, and help whoever else was in need. So sitting in cafeterias for 1 year at a public school was tough, but it was okay for me. I was good. I was confident enough. And then I was fortunate enough. My parents were like, "You've got to get back into sports. It's gonna keep your mind out of things. You're gonna focus a little bit more." So my parents had just menial jobs. My dad was a printer, or still is a printer by trade, and my mom is a secretary. So they were like, we brought you guys here for a reason. We want you to excel and do better than we did. We got married young. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to be recruited to a boarding school where I played soccer and squash. And yeah, that was the beginning of my journey in the States, and things started getting a lot better.
Yeah, fair enough. You got some stories like where you first came over and you just were kind of on autopilot doing something out of habit, and then somebody either like gave you a look or something about like, oh, that's weird that I didn't even realize that I did this, and somebody else in the US does it a completely different way, like whether it's just customs or things like that. Because I think when you travel, and like I've realized this when I was in South Africa for a while, like three and a half weeks, and been to other places, and if you're not switched on, like you can just do things that you would normally do out of habit, and all of a sudden you're either offending somebody by accident or whatever. And so I learned very quickly that I had to be switched on all the time and paying attention. But do you have any stories like that when you first came? Because I think people in the US, we do a lot of weird things that we don't realize until we go other places. And then the same thing on the flip side as well.
Yeah, no, no, no. There was for sure. I think you're gonna get a kick out of it. So, at our schools in Africa, any new person that came into the school, we had to say good morning, sir, good morning, ma'am. And so when I came right up to the US and I had a teacher, I'd say good morning, sir, good morning, ma'am, and my peers would look at me as if I was crazy, to be honest. They were like, they were honestly like, hey, this guy's from the Navy or something, and I started laughing. I said, no, 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 just out of respect, I'm not going to call your teacher by their first name or their last name. So I think that was a huge difference. I think respect was so important. Um, and I think till I die, I'll probably have this in me. But yeah, a few of my peers were like, this guy, he's just so straight.
Yeah.
So so that was a big one for me because even a few kids talked back to our teachers in class, and I was like, man, he's gonna get it. But everybody else started laughing in class. So yeah, a pretty big difference in that aspect of things.
Heaven forbid you have manners. Unbelievable. Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Okay, so talk about the squash, getting back into sports, because I think squash is not the most popular sport in the US. I think you had the opportunity to play professional, if I'm not mistaken. And so talk through that. How does the pro scene in squash work relative
Yes.
to the other sports? And yeah, because you mentioned you went to boarding school, you were playing soccer and squash. So talk through that as well.
Yeah, so Eric, I didn't ever play really professional. It's pretty close. I played. So when I came to the US, I started playing squash at a really early age. The whole reason of getting into squash, my mom really didn't want to play tennis in the sun. We didn't have any indoor courts. So she's like, hey, pick a court, something where we play indoors because it's too hot in Africa. So I got thrown into squash, believe it or not. And I still tell her today, it's your fault. I could have been playing in Wimbledon. Who knows? So I always give some backlash for that. But no, I played for Zimbabwe. I really dislike talking about myself, but since we're on this, I'll tell you a bit. I played a little bit. I worked really hard at it. Got onto the national team. And believe it or not, I played cricket. My goal was to play cricket for the Zimbabwe national team when I grew up, or even get a scholarship over to Europe, and that would help me out with my finances and so forth. But no, when I moved to the US, there was no cricket, there was no field hockey, and I was struggling with the fact that I worked my whole life working really hard and training for these other sports, and now I had to go back into squash. But it was actually a great direction for me because it helped me with my studies, and it got me into schools that I never thought I'd be able to get into. So I played. as I told you before, I was recruited by a boarding school, very small boarding school called Westminster School in Simsbury, Connecticut. About 300 students, great community, great people I met, lifelong friends I've met there for sure. And I played there for 2 years. They wanted me there for my junior year to repeat that year. So I ended up playing there. I played a lot of tournaments in the US. And I did decent enough and well enough that colleges were actually taking a look at me, and ended up going to Trinity College my first freshman year. And that year, we actually won our sixth national title, and which was pretty fun. I got to meet a few players from all over the country or world actually that I actually grew up playing in Zimbabwe with from South Africa, which was pretty neat. Um, and I did that just for a year, but my grades really suffered because it was brand new for me. I was actually doing pre-dental, and I ended up actually withdrawing from college because my parents were like, "We didn't come here for you to play sport." And that was a big battle that year too, because I had said to my parents, "I really want to go pro, so send me to England, please, because that's where it starts." So that's how I got into squash, and actually after that year, I did transfer schools, and I went to a school that didn't play squash, so I left squash for a bit after that. So
Mm. So, okay. So you stopped playing squash, sadly for you. And then you said you're doing pre-dental, but also as we talked before, and you mentioned at the top of the show that you had your degree is in finance. So
mhm.
how did that switch occur? Was there like, are you at this point, are you trying to figure out what you're interested in, or are you trying to find something that you know will be a viable career? Because I think that's a fine line to walk sometimes between like I hate this, but the career field pays well, and I really love this, and there's no jobs in it whatsoever.
Yeah. No, you're right. It was a big move for me, just because pre-dental had a lot of math in it, and I love doing math. And so growing up, going back to Africa from our previous question is your parents always wanted you to go into a big career, and you always were forced into that because there was such a underlining factor. You either were really rich or really poor. There was no middle ground for anything. So it's either your family had businesses or so forth. So I saw my strong point as being math. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go into accounting. I switched careers from dental and went into accounting, which I thought was really fun, but not giving me the challenge. So I switched to finance, and I ended off my college career actually with a finance degree.
Mm. And what time frame is this? What year is this?
So
To put it
two,
into history.
yeah, about 2006 to 2008 is when I graduated from Loyola University in New Orleans.
Okay, so talk through that then, because you're hitting basically a year or two before the housing bubble collapses. People are getting
Yeah.
laid off. I mean, I wasn't an adult at this time, but if I recall correctly, everything was like skyrocketing, asset prices, etc. And it seemed like things were going well. So for you to go into the finance world at that time, talk through what that was like entering the field at that time, and then being only 1, 2 years in your professional career, um, as in finance, and then all of a sudden everything collapses. Talk to that, what it was like for you getting into the field, what it was like, what people were thinking and talking about at the time, and then kind of dealing with the fallout of 2008 and the bailouts and all that stuff that happened.
Yeah. So, Eric, you're hitting that head on, man. It was a shocker when I came back from New Orleans. I said I could have stayed and done another degree, but I don't think my parents are gonna support me on that one. So I didn't know what to do. I honestly, it was nobody is hiring you, right? I tried so hard to get a job in finance, and no, there was no hits at all. So believe it or not, I got back into squash again. Hadn't played squash for like 3 or 4 years, um, and my body had not seen a squash court in forever. And I applied for a job at the University Club in New York City. And they actually took me on. And I'll tell you, I couldn't walk back and forth to the train station those couple of weeks because my body was not in squash shape. I had been lifting weights. I put on a lot of weight. New Orleans is a fun place, as you know, and the food is amazing.
Hmm.
And I
If
met
you're
a
not
lot.
careful, you will
Exactly.
yeah.
So I started coaching squash, and I was like, this will be great for a couple of months and we'll see how the market fares off. The bubble was pretty monstrous. And when it blew up, things really took a big hit. And so a couple of months and I was at the university club, but I was not liking it. I was just like, I really going back to how my parents thought, you've got to get a job, you've got to get something sustainable. And so I had moved back to Connecticut and I was just playing at a racket club, Southport Racket Club in Southport, Connecticut. And actually, a commodities owner by the name of Raf Avner, such a nice guy, approached me and he'd always see me at the squash court. He's like, I own a commodities firm, Shaun. If you want to be an analyst, bring your resume in and we'll see if we could start you off. And, very blessed and such a nice chap. I'll always give him a shout out because he started me off in the, I'll be always thankful forever. And I was there for a year actually and liked what I was doing, but maybe the child in me was too ambitious. I thought I wasn't moving fast enough up where I wanted to be. But I got great experience there.
Talk to, for people listening that have no idea about commodities or the financial markets or any of these things, can you um, talk through what that is and then how it fits into 2008 and kind of what sorts of things are going on in Wall Street world at the time?
Yeah, so I was pretty green at the time also with what commodities were, and I had to learn quite a bit. They were actually dealing with biofuels, so a lot of oil being transferred from one place to the other. And that's how they were making their gains. So buying fuel for a really cheap rate and then selling it with the stock market and seeing if they could get a great actually return on what they were selling. So you'd have these huge oil tankers and they would be filling these up for a certain amount of, say, cents on the dollar and tons of it within these tanks and then reselling them to other places for a higher rate. And then I've never seen millions of dollars, but when I saw these figures, I was like, I was shocked because they made a lot of money. But a very, very risky business to be in, commodities. You could win millions of dollars or earn millions of dollars in 5 minutes and lose millions of dollars in another 10 minutes. So, very risky business to be in. But as I said, the owner who introduced me into it, I wasn't part of the trading, thankfully. I was very nervous about this, but I was more analyzing, researching companies behind the scenes to see if they had better credit lines so we could actually do business with them. And I ran a few ratios. And so that was my positioning within the company, but a very interesting field to be in.
What sorts of things did you learn about, right, researching maybe all these oil companies that like behind the scenes that when you see something in the news about gas prices or this country is going to, oh, I don't know, maybe kidnap the leader of another country last week, so maybe they can get some oil. Obviously, you weren't at that position then, but
Uh-huh.
like when you were started to relate it to like what was going on in the world, because that would have been what, 2012, 13, 10, 12, 13, something like that.
Correct. Yeah.
So we're still involved in, this is around when Libya happens. We're still in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria. We're still heavily involved in the Middle
Hmm.
East. So what sorts of things, like, are you relating it to what's going on in the world at that time and seeing the moves that different people are making, or how, like, or maybe, I don't know. I'll just leave it at that if
Yeah.
that is an
No,
accurate
that's fine.
premise or not.
No, to be honest, Eric, my head wasn't even big enough to wrap it around then, still being in the US.
Hmm.
But now seeing everything part of it, I was always looking at prices. Prices. I wasn't looking at the broader picture of everything in the US, what's going on. Just getting a grasp of the commodities itself was tough enough. But on a whole, now looking back on it, looking at different price rates we were gonna get, what we were going to be paying as now driving a car everywhere. I'm like, man, I don't know how much I'm going to be paying every week or every month for these gas prices. Um, when I look at it, it kind of saddens me now because I grew up in a different country and they're moving to this country and having everything at your fingertips, you're always really happy. In Africa, you paid absorbent amounts for fuel, like over here, we're paying like, I think it is now 2.89 per gallon here in Connecticut, which is which is nothing probably to what we're getting in Zimbabwe. Um, so I see the no people like to monopolize or like, you know, it makes me sad a bit because man, everybody should be able to survive and be accessible to a lot of things because I think life's too short. Before you know it, everybody's suffering and this is not good. So no, looking back on it now, I'm like, everybody's out to gain something. I hope not. I hope that's not the mentality because, we're living in a world where, as I always say to my brother who just had a kid, like life's too short. You've got to be happy and, those around you, you've got to help them too. So no, I didn't look back to your question. I did not look at the broader picture of it. I always thought everybody was being good and that's how it was. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah. Figuring out that that's not the case is always a bit it's not very fun. And then you start to
no,
get jaded very quickly.
exactly.
Um yeah. And to your point, like everyone is acting in their own selfish interests a lot of the time, right? Even like me and you included, right? You wanted to get a promotion and like
Exactly.
and so it just depends on the degree in which people are willing to ruin other people to get what they
Right.
want, which is not good, of course. Okay, so you mentioned that you wanted to get a promotion at that spot. So what was next after the commodities place?
Oh man, a lot went on, Eric. I was still at the South Boracay Club playing squash where I met the owner, Raf Avner. Um, and I play squash, workout. I become an avid workout person. I loved actually doing weights. I thought this helped me a lot in many aspects of my life. Um, I started playing indoor soccer, five-a-side, and intramural, where it was, both women and men together, but I got nervous because people were really intense. So I said, I don't know if I was going to win a cup or anything, but people were really headhunting. But that was my fitness there. So what happened was, towards my end of my year at the commodities training firm, the racket club offered me a head squash pro position as the director. And I took it actually. And this threw me right back into squash again, which this is why I say squash has been such a good thing for me. It's helped me in so many ways since I've moved to the US. And so at the time became the head director of squash, I was about 28, 29 years old, pretty young for sure to take on that role. Um, and I also got my personal training certification. So I really, I started to see sitting behind a desk, looking at figures is all well and good. I loved analyzing data so much. But at the end of the day, I wasn't helping anybody. I wasn't, helping, or for me, that's a huge part of me. I like helping and it makes me live my life every day to the fullest. So it was great to be back at a squash club where I could coach squash. I coached all ranges from young kids to adults. And also in one in particular, I had an autistic kid, and any progression I had, maybe one little thing over 5 months, I enjoyed a ton. So yeah, that was for the next 4 years. I was the head squash pro at Southport Racket Club and a personal trainer.
Mm. You enjoyed, well, I guess I mean, obviously you enjoyed the personal training part because that's what you're trying to do full time
Yeah.
now or are doing full time now. So then I think if I've done my math correctly, that brings us up to 2018, 19, something like that.
Yeah, I would say probably let's go back, but because
Yeah.
I left the commodities trading firm. I started '09 and probably finished at the end of 010, 2010.
Hmm.
And so I got offered the position at the Record Club probably 2011.
Okay.
Um, so at the University Club, I probably was a short stint, probably like 3 months, 4 months, and then I got offered the commodities trading job. So yeah, so that puts us to I finished probably at the South Record Club 2014, 15
Okay.
was my end over there.
So what are you up to after that?
Oh man, you're gonna laugh, but yeah, I met a girl, and we became really close. Started dating her, and we moved to Florida. I sold my property. I left squash, and we started investing in properties in West Palm Beach and Palm Beach Gardens. She had an interior design business. And this is when Airbnb started getting pretty big. And we started thinking, okay, we'll get 3 or 4 places, and we Airbnb them in Florida. So, which was pretty big for me. It was a big move. I'd sold my house, and my parents really wanted to give me the ringer for it. They were like, we never even bought a house at your age. What is wrong with you? Uh, so I got given a lot of flack for this, but yeah, I ended up going and starting my next phase in life as an entrepreneur, and I enjoyed it a ton. I was there for from 2000, probably end of 14, 15 to 2018. I was doing this Airbnb stuff.
How difficult was it break into that with zero experience? Or like, or what sort of lessons did you learn, or were you lucky enough to not get like shafted at all in that sort of business? Because that can be one if you're not careful. All of a sudden, you're out lots of money for because you didn't read the fine print or something like that.
No, you're right. I I call myself a bozo for doing what I did, but you know, as they say, whatever you get into, you probably got to learn a lot before you go in. I probably just jumped into ice cold water, to be honest, and started from scratch. I really depended on the person who was an interior designer, my girlfriend at the time. And she was like, no, I'll teach you how to do it. But yeah, the Airbnb thing was brand new. That thankfully, there were not many laws at the time. Nobody really knew about it. It was just up and coming. Well, in the US, but Europe, it had kickstarted for sure over there before the US. So learning about property prices, learning about insurance, learning about how to put flooring down, learning how to snake a toilet, learning how to deal with customer service was huge. It was such a learning curve for me, but I really wanted it to work. And it was a big learning curve, but it was great because I actually tacked on a ton of tools that I could carry for the rest of my life. But yeah, actually, to add on to that, me being in finance, I should have been a little bit smarter. I'll be honest with you. Uh, actually, going to a different place and having, Airbnbs that the busy season is when it's really cold in the Northeast. Everybody runs to Florida in the winters. And that was our busiest season. So, very cyclical business. So that was a big learning curve for me. But, to be honest, knocking on wood, we actually broke even quite a bit of the time, or we made a profit. So we did really well in the winter seasons. So,
So where are you in your head as far as like for people listening, they're probably thinking to themselves, maybe this doesn't seem like a very coherent plan.
mhm.
So where are you at this point in terms of are you in the mindset of kind of like you just want to enjoy life and take the opportunities that life is giving without maybe and that's the plan? Or are you a little bit worried at this point that you kind of have to get your ducks in a row and like where are you in mentally at this time? Because I think you would have been what, 30, 29, 30, something like this in early 30s?
Yeah, I was about 32, 33 at that point. So, no, actually, you know, I probably, as you said, what's my animal instinct? More of a lion type thing. I thought I had my family supporting me in a sense of like, Sean, if you're gonna do it, do it. The girlfriend at the time too was a strong supporter. You've got to take a risk. It's just like trading, I guess. If you don't take a risk, you're never gonna know what's out there for you. But people will again say to me, hey, you've got to take a calculated risk. Yes, everything has to be calculated, but if you have, some support and you're not going to really put yourself in the red, why not go for it? Like everything, like I always look back at my parents, like coming to the US. They came into the US with $15,000, to be honest. And man, looking back on that, would I ever do something like that? No ways in hell. 15,000 US dollars and landing here with 2 kids and trying to figure out stuff, is something I could never do. But whenever I'm in, I would say when COVID hit, and I was just struggling with that fact, and I had a chat with my parents, and I said, like, how did you guys do it? They're like, Sean, whatever you have, we came into this country with $15,000. I don't know what you're crying about right now, So that kind of that kind of put me back into line, and so when it comes to taking risks and so forth, I think that's what my mentality was. You can always build. You're still young. I was still young at the time. I thought I was very young, and I took that opportunity. So all the viewers out there, I think, if you've got a passion and you feel like it's going to go in your favor and you want to take a risk, go for it, but you could also be calculated, look back at your bank account and see what you've got in there, I don't want to say, hey, go for it.
Yeah. Talk through the risk-taking part about maybe the first one might be a bit more difficult to stomach. How do you make it easier on yourself? What are some things that you do after to maybe not have um, regrets maybe? Like how do you sort through that when you're actually about to pull the trigger on something, whether it's buying a property to Airbnb in Florida or to move to a new state or to quit the commodities job? Like what goes into the thought process of like this is a big change and we're gonna do it now? And how do you kind of think through that or make it easier to stomach a little bit? So maybe if somebody's listening and they're feeling a bit apprehensive, they've got maybe an opportunity that they're not sure if they should do or not, and maybe they're a bit scared or whatever. Like, what are some things that they can do or things that you did to help make it a bit easier to stomach or to then afterwards, if it doesn't go well, to not beat themselves up over it?
Yeah. No, so I just didn't move to Florida. So what I'd say to him is do a little bit of research on what you're gonna do. I think a little bit of research goes a long way in if you're gonna like it or not. And that's the second part to it is for sure. Are you gonna like it? Are you gonna love what you're doing? Are you gonna, is that what you're gonna get up for every day? Is it gonna be your passion? It's gonna be yours. It's nobody else's. It's what you're gonna do. It's what you're gonna create. You may even create things that nobody else has created. And this is great because you could teach other people with these life lessons. So I would say, go with your heart, go with your passion. Definitely do a ton of research. Make sure the market is not saturated where you can't even get a place within that market. Um, I would say for sure, starting off this Airbnb business, not many people were doing this at the time. So I thought it was a great way to get into something. And also, I was very, very passionate about looking at homes, transforming homes. I was not scared to do the gritty work of putting pavers down to go and fix a toilet. And YouTube was a great help for me. So for sure, anybody listening, I'd say, do some research first. See if you're gonna love it. See, if you have support, or if you know somebody who's actually doing something similar, just say, hey, let's meet up for a coffee. Let's see, pick their brains out, a little bit and see if you can get even more advice to see if it's going to be something you really like. And the more you like it, the more you're going to make out of it for sure. I feel like you'll feel like you're not even working every day. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Speaking of taking apart toilets, the first time you do it, there's always a little bit of apprehension there for sure. And then you realize it's not actually that complicated. You just have to have the
no,
right like tools, and then you're like, oh, a plumber would have charged me how much, and I just did this myself. And yeah,
exactly.
YouTube University for sure. There's plenty of channels where it's like my dad taught me things, and it's like old guys that have are just having fun and they're just like taking apart toilets or
Yeah.
changing tires on cars or whatever, all the stuff that like around the house that you would need to know. It's quite useful for sure. Uh, okay, so this takes us up to COVID, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. 2019. Yeah.
Okay, and then what is the situation there? Is it around this time that you try and go full-time personal training?
No, so excuse me, sorry. No, so my business partner, so the person I was dating, we actually became business partners. We stopped dating. I hate to give that background, but it's the truth. We became really good friends. We kept on with the Airbnb business. We ended up selling in 2000, I think it was 2018, the last Airbnb. And we were kind of kicking ourselves once we look forward into COVID.
Hmm.
Excuse me. But we moved back to Connecticut, and we were undecided of what we were going to do. Were we going to stay business partners, or what was going to happen with us? And within that short space of time, she had approached me and said, why don't we get another business? We had actually looked at a few properties because we had sold some of our properties in West Palm and Palm Beach Gardens for a good amount, and we got some good returns. And we actually found a property in Connecticut that was on foreclosure, and the bank kept hold of it, and we invested in it. It was, Eric, I don't know. I could never live in a house like this. It was huge. I didn't even know how this was even possible. It was a big house, and the car garage was about a car garage. And
Damn.
I know, tell me about it. Um, and my parents were like, Sean, what do you need a place like this for? Like, this is ridiculous. I said, I don't know. Maybe you could run a business out of it. I don't know. Uh, so we actually went on ahead and actually, we both put our heads together and I said, what is a recession-proof business? Because we were so, I think we were so scared about the cyclical business that we just had run with the Airbnb. So we said we need something that's going to be so sturdy year round. So I said, man, everybody makes babies. You know, I think we should invest in a baby business. You know, um, so we did. We ended up going to Virginia. We purchased a business that was an e-commerce business. I thought everything online so much better. To be honest, I was terrible with computers. It was only the finance that helped me out with the algorithms and so forth. Uh, and she was better than I was. So we ended up purchasing a baby business from a vendor in Virginia, and we brought it back to Connecticut. And that warehouse was where we stocked every baby good, and we shipped everything out of there. So we had a online business presence at Amazon, and we had our own website. So I was doing the shipping and the coordinating in the warehouse, and then I would come back in the office. And so that's what we started doing for a year just before COVID had hit. Um, so yeah,
Seems like it would have been in a good position during COVID for e-commerce stuff because you couldn't go buy anything in the store. Well, you could, but like people looked
yeah,
at you like you were crazy. That was a very strange time to walk in and like have people wearing 17 masks because they didn't
right.
know what was going on. And then you realize, I think some people realized quite quickly that like it wasn't as bad as they were saying. And then it became weird very quickly. Like if it wasn't for soccer, I would probably not have been in a good spot because we were just going outside and playing, and we were always
Yeah.
getting kicked off fields as well, which I thought was funny, um,
Why?
because we weren't six feet apart, man.
Oh man. Oh
Yeah,
jeez.
well, I mean the places that just closed down the field, they're like nobody can come to like they took like rims off the basketball courts outside, they took the nets off the goals, like everything. And so because we all had our own equipment or whatever, we just go
Hmm.
anyways. And then
Yeah.
but yeah, that would have been without soccer. I say this fairly often, but like soccer got me through that for sure because we could go outside. But then yeah, to go out into the grocery store, you're like I need food.
Hmm.
And the first couple of times, I remember seeing people wiping stuff down with like wiping off the gas handle at the gas station with like a
Oh
Clorox wipe.
man.
I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that is not the amount of things that are on that pump. Nothing. There's no saving that at all. Like
No.
you could try, or like wiping down their grocery bags, and I'm just like, oh, like this is you can't live like this, even if like it's not sustainable. Anyways, I digress. So it seemed like that would have been a good business for that because nobody was going anywhere. Is that,
Yeah.
did you guys keep it going through that?
Yeah. So we kept it going. So I only lasted there because, I just thought the business was going in a different direction. And I thought I needed to get out at the time. So I said, I'm going to sell my shares back and have her take it on and have it as her own, which I said I'm going to do. I wanted to get back into finance and go back into that. Now that everything was so shut and closed, I think, working from home would have been a great option. And So I left that business and she took it on full, which she loved, you know. She had a lot of passion for it, and I think she still runs it. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I went right back into finance, which was so hard and a big decision of mine. I had moved back home with my parents, which was very tough. I was older. I built my own ways in life, and you know, my parents are very happy to have me home. Bless them a ton for this. Uh, but it was great. I stayed at home until I found a job. I was able to find a job at American Express. I was very fortunate as a young analyst, and I was with a lot of young kids. You know, their experiences and what they knew with the computers and all had been a vast improvement from what I had last left finance with. But I had the business aspect of a lot of things, so I think that helped me out a lot. So I was there for 8 months. I was a junior analyst at American Express and I loved it. I thought the community was amazing, great work environment, had people from all different backgrounds there, which was great. And I did that for 8 months and got another finance job at the New School in New York City, the nonprofit. And I enjoyed that. I was there for a year. And then just to speed things up, I after that year, I said, you know what? I really miss helping people. And I went right back into squash and personal training. And that's where I am today.
Very nice. Okay, so when you train people, how's your process work? You meet somebody, like, do they tell you what they want, or do you run them through an assessment, or what's your process like?
Yeah, I run them from first thing is, excuse me, I get them through their lifestyle. I want to know what they're doing, what their goals are, how many times a week they're working out, and, what they want to come out of our sessions. I want to know if we're compatible. It's not all about, hey, here's your goals. Are we going to actually, because I always joke around with my friends and I always say, being a personal trainer, I think I should be a psychologist too. We should get paid 2 and 1, man. Or either one of us.
Yeah.
It's just a lot, but you actually maintain such strong relationships with these people. You listening to them every day. They learning about you, you listening to their life stories. And at the same time, you're trying to keep them nice and fit and healthy. So yeah, that's my background of how I go about it. If you're a good fit and I'm able to help, that's the way to go.
hmm How'd you get your first couple of clients? It's always the first ones are always tough when you start to do
Yeah.
something like that because there's always people when you talked about like market saturation, there's no
Yeah.
shortage of trainers for sure.
So my first couple of clients, to be honest with you, so I work at Lifetime Fitness in
hmm
Harrison, New York. They actually give you a few leads in the beginning. And I think they didn't tell us this to make us scared, but if you don't convert those leads, because those are leads that actually want to do training, um, if you make a bust on those, you are in serious trouble. But I was actually able to actually convert my few sessions, and I got these clients, which I still have them till today, which is great. And I started them off with one once a week, and actually this year everybody's transferred over to twice a week, so which is great.
Mm. So when you're getting your certifications, what sorts of things are you learning? Like, for example, I'm heavily focused on like athletic performance, speed, that sort of thing. If I have a 50-year-old that comes in or that talks to me, I'm like, yeah, I don't really know what to do with you because we're not doing box jumps and plyos and the rest. So what sorts of things are you learning when you're taking your certifications? And then in terms of like nutrition, different types of exercises? Like, do you have a specific style, like to use contrast training? Like, what sorts of things are you using and learning in these certifications?
Yeah, so I'm NASM certified. Excuse me, and it's a very intense program, but it also gives you different types of levels you're going to be training with. What are you going to give them? Are you going to give them stabilization? Do they need more of that in their life? Now that's dependent on their age, right? A lot of people, they're getting older, want to work on their stabilization, or they've got to do weight training because they don't want to get osteoporosis and it's strengthen their bones. So from an age perspective, you look at and ask your clients, what's going on, what do you need? And this certification really helps in that sense of what you're going to be putting your clients through. And also, it's not just your certification, it's your experiences you've had in the past and how you've worked with it. I've played so many sports. So working with different athletes and seeing how they move. Movement's a big, 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 big sign for me. How I see people move on the field, they could be really fast running forward and super slow sideways. So, and that's all two different muscles they have. What muscles are weaker, what muscles are stronger. So, yeah, that really prepped me. I'd say it's an additive advantage to go through a program that gives you the insight, but your background is super vital in how you can piece everything together and make a really great program for them.
The first time you had an older person, because when I go to
Mhm.
the gym and I'm lifting, and then I see the trainers that work at the gym with with an older person, I always worry like not for them because they have the certs and everything else, but like I'm like I feel like I would break this person by accident. Like how do you go about programming for something or testing capabilities in that sort of situation? Because like they're more fragile, but also maybe
Mhm.
need like the progression I feel like is different than it would be. I mean, it definitely is different, but like talk through that.
Yeah, so that my initial assessment is like, hey, what do you have any injuries? What's going on? Have you had a hip replacement? Are your knees replaced? So that gives me a good understanding of how I'm going to progress with them. I always say to them, Rome wasn't built in one day, and they get so happy. They're like, "You're right, Sean. We can't go fast." I said, "No, I can't have you going pale white and sitting on a chair, and I have to rip out the AED." I always laugh at them, and I say, we're gonna have to build an app for this AED and put it on our iPhones for every trainer, because when you're in that moment and you're trying to race for things. But no, that's a great question. I really have to assess what injuries, what they've been doing in the past. And so for me, it's a really slow progression to what they're going to do on their second stage of training. So I would start from seeing how they just do sit down squats on a box, with no weight at all. And I would be there assisting, hoping, they don't veer off to the left or the right. So I'm right next to them. um, Even the weight training, I know they'll a lot of older people I need weight training because it's my longevity and I need this. I'm like, if we race into weights and you move one direction in the wrong way, you're gonna hit yourself. So I move into resistance bands first. I really want to get them stabilized first and to actually feel the feet underneath them before we can move into any guided movements with weights. So that's how I go about with an older person. A funny story. I had a tennis player, older man, probably about 85 years old, came to me and said, "Hey, I need you to do a program for me. But if you injure me, I'm firing you on the dot." And I said, "Deal, let's go for it." I love a challenge like this because I said to him, I'm going to walk through everything so slowly with you. And instead of using like just free weights, we're going to use places where you're going to sit and support your back. And I'll create a program for you, but we got to progress at some stage. So, yeah, that was one of the most direct people. And older you get, they are very direct in what they say to you. So it's like, okay,
Mm.
let's go.
How do you go about creating programs or adjusting programs for, well, for anyone really, depending on what they need? How do you balance out, like, for example, if they only are seeing you twice a week, and they're a bit younger, that's a bit more recovery time. It feels like you don't really need it, but if they're doing stuff on their own as well, like, how do you balance that out? And then, because I have that with my players sometimes when
Mhm.
they're like, okay, yeah, I want to work on this today. I'm like, well, what'd you do this weekend? They're like, oh, I played 4 games in my tournament. I'm like, okay, well,
Oh man.
I'm like, well, we're not shooting then today. That's not going to happen. Um, but how do you go about doing that?
No, so I'm a very strong supporter of shocking your body and doing something very different all the time. So I definitely I'll go with the normal approach. Let's attack two separate muscles a day, that are different. And then on that third day, once you've done a full body, take 2 days off. But you've got a lot of people that actually will do it on the side or do it in the evening and come back and do other workouts. So to be honest, I'm like, one day, let's go hop on a basketball court. Let's go shoot some hoops. Let's see what you got. Let's see if you can jump. Let's see if you can move sideways. I like to change it up because I know your muscles are always fatiguing. So my programs really change every 2 weeks. I don't keep it the same. And people are like, why are you doing this to me? I'm like, because your muscles know what you're doing. And I don't want you saying to me at the end of the session, I got nothing of it. So I'm a really strong believer in doing other activities like playing another sport, doing something different that your body's never ever seen. So I really want your body not to hurt, but I want those muscles that you never use to be used too, because
Mm,
it's a full component of everything to be using all your muscles.
yeah. As far as like, what are some things maybe? Well, I'll add two parts to this question. The first is that we're still in January, so hopefully people that have done their New Year's resolutions to get to the gym are still doing it. Um, so the first part is like, how do you get people to keep themselves motivated or keep themselves wanting to go? And then the second part is like, what are maybe some things that um misconceptions maybe about staying fit, training, that sort of thing, that if somebody asked you a question about like, hey, well, yeah, what are some big misconceptions then? We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So to keep people going, I think for sure everybody's got a lot going on in their lives, and I'm like, what are your goals? If you haven't reached a goal, we've got to hit that goal. There's always a goal after another. There's not always one goal. I'm sure anybody says, I want to get maybe a pack of two abs. The next goal is I want four. You know what I mean? So I always look at it like that. People are always wanting to better themselves. There's not one spot where I'm like, I'm hitting the perfect shot. They're like, okay, now I've got to look at my other skills. What can I do better with that? So I always ask my clients, I'm always like, so, we've hit this goal. What's your next goal? What would you like to do? 9 out of 10, I have a client that's like, I just had a baby. I'm like, okay, so you've got to be even fitter, man. You've got to be on your feet, your sleep habits are got to be better. Your eating's got to be better. So we start focusing on different parts of their lives, which really need this work. So I think it's not about the goals they've hit already, but I always say to these people, okay, so what's your next goal? Give me another goal you want to hit. So,
Yeah. And what are some misconceptions about people like who are just maybe they're just working out on their own and they're doing a bro split or whatever? Like what's just as an example, not that those are all bad at all, but what are some misconceptions or maybe some advice for people who are just in the gym on their own? I was at a I was working out a couple of years ago and the guy said, what's your goal or what's your plan? Or like why are you here?" I was like, "I don't know, to be stronger or whatever." And
uh-huh.
he goes, "Well, if you don't have a plan, you're just dicking around." And I was like, "Okay, well, good."
No, but yeah, as you get back to the bro split, whatever you call it, I think,
Yeah, bro split. It's like push pull legs is the bro split.
yeah,
That is
so
it's on the internet that people do.
yeah, but that's a great way of doing things, I guess, but you always got to hold your body accountable to switching and changing the realms of how you work it out because everybody thinks, okay, we do that bro split every day. It's just going to make me big. It's going to puff me out. But your endurance and your strength is a big factor. As you get older, as I think for myself, as I get older, it gets harder and harder. So my goal is to keep my endurance and keep that strength. So by putting your body through different workouts, you don't want to keep that regular bro split going on every day and then over a few months because your body's going to get used to it. So I think definitely I would say look at other people's workouts. It's not all about your own workout. I think learning from others is a key factor. And looking at other exercises online, I think is a great way of expanding your rapport, building muscles that you've never built before, you know. So I think just looking at one program or, you know, the bro split, as you say, is not just the one way you want to keep working out. I think there's other facets in life that you could look at that could also improve your workouts.
Definitely. What about on the nutrition side in terms of advice people think or things people know, misconceptions, things like that? Because I mean, I'm sure that you've been paying attention as well, but obviously the whole "Make America Healthy Again" thing
Mhm.
with the election 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, whenever it was, a lot of people I think started paying attention more. A lot of things came to light. Like, oh yeah, let me read the ingredients label on this thing, and it's just filled with stuff that you can't pronounce, and you're like, what is actually in here? But anyway, so what? Maybe things that hidden things, right? People know that protein is good for them. People know that chicken
Yeah,
and broccoli is good for them, but like maybe some more hidden ones that are good, and then also some misconceptions from on the nutrition side as well.
yeah. No, so I will just give you a background on my nutrition. I'm no nutritionist, but I tell my clients that first off, I'm like no nutritionist, but I could help you best I can in how I do things and how I like doing things. So I just basically like I'll in the mornings I'll have my overnight oats. For lunch I'll have rice, ground beef mixed with ground turkey, with potatoes, cucumber and tomato, and maybe a little bit of some vinegar in there. And that's my lunch. And then my dinner is probably maybe a light dinner with the chicken breast and some potatoes. So that's probably everybody's like, man, he's eating a lot of carbs. Yeah, I my goal is to add on maybe 5 more pounds of muscle. And I enjoy that. And it's clean. It's nothing, unhealthy. Don't get me wrong. I love my sweets. I love chocolates. I grew up in a family that always loves desserts. So you've got to have a cheat day. And for me is once, once a weekend, I'll have some chocolates or sweets. But no, going back to health and yeah, you can look at all these labels. It's great to look at all of them, but you want to go, I would say labels that have least ingredients in it that, you can actually pronounce and you actually can, you know, it's a big thing. I feel like, yeah, in this day and age, especially living in America, a lot of foods are processed for sure, a ton, and it's scary for sure. But you can control that. You can actually move away from stuff and be more organic in what you want to do. I know it's more expensive, but your health is, the best thing out there. So if you feel good, you're going to work out and feel better. So yeah, nutrition. There's a lot of the protein, the creatine, and all of that stuff. You get a lot of people saying you've got to take a lot of protein, you got to take a lot of creatine, you're going to get big. For me, I stopped creatine and protein in the last 2 months, and my body feels great because I'm taking in the protein through natural resources. Um, I know the creatine, there's a lot of research done on it. It's great for your brain, it's great for all of that. I think less chemicals in my body, I'll live a little bit longer, to be honest.
Mm,
So I've really retracted from taking more chemicals into my body than going the natural way.
yeah. Yeah, creatine, I think for me helps with recovery a lot.
Okay.
So I need to, I mean, like for example, if I have a field session and a gym session and then cardio or training or whatever, like I'm
Mhm.
doing 8 to 10 things a week, like I need the extra help, the recovery boost, for sure. Um, but yeah, no, like you said, a lot of good research done on creatine. And then the other thing about paying a bit more for organic food is like you're gonna pay a bit more now to not hopefully not have giant hospital bills later.
No, true.
Um,
Very
and
true.
and if people think about it that way, it really is an investment into your
For
health, which
sure.
is the most important thing. If you can't move around, then like yeah.
No.
So, are you doing online training as well?
No, I haven't kicked that off just as of yet, but I do my own personal training outside, of where I work,
Hmm.
which has been really growing, which I'm so happy with. But I'm not much of a social media type person. To be honest, I was very hesitant when Samir said, "Hey, Sean, you want to do a podcast?" I run very far away from social media or anything on me. I'd rather be in a crowd of people and be right in the middle, to be honest, and no attention on me. But no, I've had a few people come to me and say, Sean, you've got to get this set up because it'll help your business out a lot. So my New Year's resolution, maybe take a big step into that.
Okay. Well, do you have anything even kind of set up? Like if people want to learn more, is there a website or somewhere that they should go?
No, I don't have anything. I'm sorry, guys. But if I do have something, I'll send you a link, Eric.
Okay.
But I think for anybody wanting to get started, come on, sit-ups at home. I tell my clients we've got a challenge every day. Let's do 20 to 30 sit-ups every day. Let's do 5 to 10 push-ups. If you haven't done push-ups before, let's start that off. Let's start with the groundwork, walking, maybe jogging, something just athletic and, just to get your body moving, get the blood moving. I think that's a great way to get started. And then if you think you need weights and so forth, I'd be, if anybody want to reach out and needed advice with that, I'd be happy to share anything or any thoughts that I could give them.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Do you have any last nickels before we get you out of here?
No, thank you, Eric. I really appreciate you taking this time on this snowy Sunday. I hope you're doing something fun for the rest of the day.
Yeah, maybe probably hop on the stationary bike, get a workout in, so I don't just sit around and do nothing. Um, yeah, so if for those listening, if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I can get them to Shaun, no problem, and try and get you guys an answer. Otherwise, check out the description. Hopefully, he has a link for me relatively soon. Go check it out whenever we get there. And thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys next time. Peace. Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you want to watch another episode like this one, click there. If you want to subscribe, click there.